welcome in everyone to this week's episode of Craze's Corner. We have our top 10 consensus quarterback rankings today. Me, Will, Jeff, and Zach came together. We each compiled our own lists of our top quarterbacks for fantasy football this year. I made it into consensus rankings. We have our consensus top 10, so you're going to make sure you stay tuned for that. But first, we got a couple of news stories we want to get into. The first news story, possibly the biggest one, DeAndre Hopkins has finally decided on a team. He is now going to be the newest wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans. A 2-year, $26 million deal with incentives that can push that deal up to $32 million. It's a little bit lower money, $13 million per year, than we've seen some of the other wide receivers get this offseason. We saw Odell get a 1-year, $18 million deal. Hopkins settles for a 2-year, $26 million deal, so I kind of thought that was interesting. We'll see him for the Titans. You know, he kind of had this wish list. He wanted a stable coaching, a great defense, because defense wins championships, and I'm not really sure Tennessee is going to put him in the position to where the defense is even going to matter for winning championships, but I guess we'll see how Hopkins does on the Titans. The next news story is that Breece Hall, who's kind of been expected to be ready for week 1 as for fantasy purposes, he's been placed on the PUP list just at the beginning of training camp. He still can come off of that at any time. That just helps them get some flexibility in the roster for now. So will Breece Hall be ready for week 1? It's kind of still up in the air. There's some other running backs like Isaiah Pacheco in Kansas City who are also on the PUP list. Kendra Miller is on the non-football injury list. So there's a couple other guys that kind of been placed on this list, but it doesn't mean necessarily that they're out for the beginning of the season. They still can come back. There's lots of time. And the final news story is that the deadline has passed for franchise-tagged players to get an extension. So Saquon Barkley was unable to come to an agreement with the New York Giants, and he's currently not signed his franchise tag, just like Josh Jacobs. So both of these running backs are currently not technically on their team's rosters. They can hold out as long as they want with no fines because they're not currently on the team because they haven't signed. So it'll be an interesting situation. I expect both of them to suit up week 1. I expect them to kind of drag this out through training camp. Running backs have kind of started to believe that they're worth more than they are getting paid. You know, these guys are both slated to make $10 million this year, and they seem to want, to get that long-term deal so they can get more guaranteed money in that $20, $30 million range. Kind of an interesting situation. I've heard that the running backs kind of have their own group chat going at this point, trying to talk about different ways that they might be able to increase their worth or things that they can do as a group to kind of bring their contract values up. So I'm kind of interested to see what you guys think. Do you guys think running backs like Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, who are threatening this holdout, are in the right? Or do you guys think that, you just got to take what's coming to you? If a team's going to give you that guaranteed money, like you're a Christian McCaffrey or Nick Chubb type guy where you get that long-term extension, you take it, or are you trying to fight for every single dollar that you can get? And you can let us know using the MEedia app. The MEedia app is a virtual press conferencing app that allows you to host a virtual press conference from your phone. You can go in there, record the press conference, post it to any social media platform, and tag either me at Pro Football Craze or Media at Media MPC. You can let us know, do you think that these running backs are, are they being divas or do they deserve to get paid more? And like I said, let us know using the MEedia app. It's available on the Google Play or the App Store. And now let's welcome in our guests. We have Zach, Will, and Jeff was here at one point. I guess he's decided to skip, but, welcome in, guys. How are we doing?
He's a running back, so he's holding out.
Yeah, he wanted $10 bajillion, and we were like, Jeff, we just can't do it, man. Yeah, he's like, well, I'm out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe Jeff will come right back in just before we start talking about this top 10, like these running backs are going to do. But I want to know your thoughts. Zach, what do you think about these running backs holding out, saying they want more guaranteed money in these contracts? Do you think they deserve it, or are they just making so much money it doesn't matter at this point?
It's I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole of, these guys are millionaires, stop crying, but part of me does feel that way, and at the same time, $10 million to play the lowest valued position I don't know exactly who it was. I think it was Colin Cohart said, where were you guys, with safeties and interior linemen who have a very short career as well and generally get paid less than their peers.
Mm-hmm.
So from the perspective of like where they should get paid, like name a Super Bowl team that, took home the Lombardi Trophy because of their running back. It's market value, and $10 million to play the position. I mean, I don't know who the top earner is. I'm assuming it's Nick Chubb. I don't know. It seems odd.
CMC.
Yeah.
CMC. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. So it just seems odd because those guys are. I mean, Saquon is great and all, but the Giants put all their money to Daniel Jones, and it's like. The Giants are a separate situation because I think they just poorly managed both Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley's situation. But Josh Jacobs probably deserved it more, in my opinion, than Saquon because Josh Jacobs is on the field every year, and Josh Jacobs every single year he's a solid top 12 running back, top 15 running back every year, whereas Saquon had times where he couldn't even stay healthy. But yeah, so. I'm kind of right in the middle. Like I don't like seeing all of them tweeting at each other, basically hugging each other, playing the little mini violin. It's kind of tone deaf when we have countries at war and a housing crisis. It's the last thing I really want to hear about is millionaires playing a sport.
Yeah, Zach, I don't disagree with you at all on that. And I think like was the song "Mama, Don't Let Your Boys Grow Up to Be Cowboys," or kids grow up to be cowboys. Hey, everybody, anyone playing high school or Pop Warner, do not play running back because there's too many. It's the evolution of college football. There are too many good kids coming out of pee-wee football into high school into college. I mean, there's good college running backs on every team in this college Division I. They could honestly play a year in the NFL, and it's just the numbers. It's an oversaturated position, and I don't know what to tell guys. The game's evolving. I'm sorry, you're not worth $7 million a year anymore, Dalvin Cook. I mean, if the Vikings really have $7 million on the table for Dalvin Cook, he's an idiot not to take the offer. It's pride now. It's just stupid and pride. And because you don't think if Josh Jacobs get cut or even Zeke, somebody, there's money on the table. It may not be as much as you like, but there's money on the table, and these guys are going to end up taking it. And it sucks. It sucks that your whole career was spent for this, and society no longer values you at the pay you thought you were going to get. Welcome to a lot of people that have been displaced in America and the economy. Right. Okay.
The only thing that's going to happen is somebody is going to have one of those years, and then that's going to reset everything again. It goes back just how it was with basketball, where everybody's talking about the big man is no longer needed in the NBA. Mm-hmm. Then a big man comes in that can shoot, that can move like a guard and do everything else, and now they're backing up. Same thing's going to happen in the NFL again. It's just everybody's gone to this pass-happy offense, and as soon as somebody goes ahead and has a season like Derrick Henry had 3 seasons ago, I think it was, when he eclipses, or there's another Christian McCaffrey, something is going to change to swing it again. It's going to depend on what the offense starts to be geared to. One that messed it up is Todd Gurley when they paid him all the money. The next year he was horrible.
All his fault.
They're like, we're not doing that again.
There's a direct correlation between the rise of running quarterbacks and the decline of the value of running back. That's not going away. So running backs better adjust. Either they better become a third wide receiver. If you can't catch the ball in the backfield, you're going to be done as a dominant contract on a team, right? So that's the problem. Problem is quarterbacks are eaten up. They've gone to 3 wide receivers. You're in a nickel dime defense. It's freeing up quarterbacks to run. And if they are running, they're not getting hit by a linebacker. They're getting hit by a safety or a small corner. And these quarterbacks are getting physically bigger. So, I don't know if there is going to be a reset, Jeff, because those are dinosaurs, right? Well, it's just the game's evolving.
But another thing that people aren't looking at, they're not looking at the actual players that they are. Saquon Barkley, had a decent last year, but people got to remember this dude hasn't been playing for a while, so that's why there's a reason why they're afraid to give him a lot of money. Josh Jacobs should be paid. He plays for the Raiders. That's enough said right there. And Dalvin Cook, long in the tooth, he's on his way out. So, you're not going to get. So that's what I'm saying. It's kind of the case study of who these guys are as well. That's now kind of being a blanket over all running backs. And no, you got to look at the situation there is as well. Saquon has had devastating injuries. Again, Josh Jacobs, you play for probably one of the worst run organizations in the National Football League. Mm-hmm. And Dalvin Cook, this has been coming for quite a while. You're towards the end of your career. Yeah. Zeke, you've definitely bypassed everything. So that's what I'm saying. We've got to look at take it by a case by case things. You just think what happens if Bijan Robinson turns to be like Adrian Peterson his first 3 years in the league. He probably won't happen, but I'm just saying, let's look if that happens. Yeah. Think about what he's going to get paid when it's time to renew his contract.
Well, I don't know, Jeff. I mean, I know I don't want – I'm saying this. I think it also depends on a team. If you're a rookie running back, you want to go with a team that as you're coming off your rookie deal, that team is transitioning back to a rookie quarterback. Like, the agents are going to have to start getting smarter with their clients to advise them to look at that stack of the team. So if you're drafted by the Jacksonville right now, you're as a running back, you're not getting a second contract from Jacksonville because all that money is going to Trevor Lawrence. So you got it. Like, there's really going to have to be agents have a responsibility to advise their clients. Hey, maybe you can't. If that team drafts you, you can't show up because you're going to spend your prime years on a cheap contract and you're not going to get the second deal. You're just not.
I'll tell you what. With the Giants situation, if you take let's say it was Josh Jacobs with the Giants and not Saquon Barkley, do you think he gets something that's more significant? Because I'm looking at the Giants, I'm like, you guys are betting everything on Daniel Jones. So I'm looking at, I can see with some teams where, yes, the quarterback is this is the guy that has to be paid. The Giants, maybe it's something that Daboll knows, but I'm just like, you guys are putting this all on Daniel Jones. He's the guy that's making this thing go, not necessarily Saquon Barkley. I don't know. With that team, I don't know. With every other team that has a top-tier quarterback, I can see. But that particular situation, I can't really say.
Yeah, that's really a special situation. If you look at the Giants there, if Saquon doesn't play, they'll have no money tied up in the running back position and no money tied up in any of their starting wide receivers. So it's really an interesting situation where they're paying their quarterback enough money and they got, big contracts like Leonard Williams on the defense is going to be making almost $35 million this season. So it does depend on the team makeup. I think that there's definitely certain teams that should pay the running back, but I think it does come back to what Will was saying, whereas when you're in Pee Wee football, we look at all the guys right now in college where, all these teams have good running backs. Nice. And at least up here in Canada is your best athlete on the field plays running back, and the second best athlete is your quarterback. And you kind of go with that. And I feel like that's kind of the way, at least up here, that teams are brought up is your best athletes most of the time going to be your running back because they're the fastest they can get around teams. And that's what you need in high school. And your second best athlete is your quarterback because then they can run around with the ball if there's no one open. And if that continues to be the way we see kids play from a young age, I think that's going to be continued what we see in the NFL where there's so many of these good running backs because that's what they've grown up playing as opposed to they could be playing on the defensive side of the ball. All these running backs, if they were playing linebacker from the time they were this young, we'd have a surplus of, amazing inside linebackers that we currently don't have. So I think it comes down to people wanting to have parents, they want to have their kids with the ball in their hand. And, that's what best athlete, you go get the ball in your hand and we do it from there. Then you move on after that. But I think that it's an interesting situation to look at. We'll see how it kind of unfolds as the next few seasons progress. Like we said, Christian McCaffrey, Nick Chubb, and Derrick Henry, they're kind of on a different level. They're the elite of the elite. and obviously the elite of the elite at every position are end up going to get paid. But when you get to guys who are 2-3 tiers down, like Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs, it'll depend on the team whether or not they can afford. The Raiders, they're paying Devontae Adams. They got a lot of money tied up in their offensive line. And like we said, the Giants, they got money tied up in Daniel Jones now. Darren Waller, and their defense has a lot of money in that. So the teams really don't have too much flexibility. If teams start learning from the Saints, where you can just start restructuring every single contract and your owner has all this money where you can pay all this signing bonuses and everything, then you can kind of start to get away with it. But a team like the Raiders, where you're almost bankrupt, you don't really have that flexibility. Mark Davis, he can't afford to start restructuring all these contracts. That's just
can't even afford a haircut.
No.
Yeah, that thing's rough looking. He makes Trump look like Rico Suave.
There you go. But yeah, let's move on here. Like I said, we're gonna do a top 10 quarterback show today. Each one of us sent in our top 10 quarterbacks. I've compiled them into a list. So we have our average. We're gonna start right from the top. Number 1, our top quarterback projected for this fantasy football season is going to be Patrick Mahomes. Jeff, Will, and Zach all have Patrick Mahomes at the 1 spot. I have Patrick Mahomes at my 2. This is a guy who was the quarterback 1 last year. So you look at that. If you're going to project that coming forward, you have almost 5,300 yards, 40 touchdowns, and another 4 on the ground. So that's an amazing season for Patrick Mahomes. The biggest question for him is, who is he going to be throwing the ball to this year? I could see that yards dropping back into the 4,000s this year, which is what I have projected. I think I have him around 49-50 when it comes to yardage-wise. I have a couple touchdowns off the top in the passing game and 1 less in the rushing game. So I think a little bit of that can come back. And, will we see the emergence of Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney? Maybe MVS will make his money's worth. He's getting paid more than these running backs are out here on the field. So to me, I like Patrick Mahomes. I think you know what you're going to get. You're going to get an extremely solid guy. He's going to be a top 3 quarterback at the least. And I think he's going to be really consistent. Zach, Will, and Jeff, you guys all have him at 1. Zach, we'll start with you. Why do you feel like he's going to be the number 1 quarterback next year?
Because we lost arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL last year, and then threw for a league high 41 touchdowns. And with it all primarily going to his tight end, who's a 30-year-old something white guy. So it's just kind of nice to see, the doubters kind of going against Mahomes last year after losing Tyreek Hill. And obviously I didn't mind him losing him because he came to my team. But the thing with Patrick Mahomes, he's just, I don't know. It's just hard when you watch him play the game. As far as like fantasy, like I feel like he was built for fantasy. Like he's just an absolute monster. We talked about the Netflix show. I don't know if that had anything to do with how I ranked him, but if I didn't want to put him number 1 before, I certainly do now. I think you said it's Sky Moore. I heard that he's impressing. He's second-year wide receiver, I believe. Yep. So usually that year 2 wide receiver breakout is generally there. He still has Travis Kelce. You got a pretty solid backfield, and you have a somewhat, I think, solid offensive line. That's the other thing too. And then he's Patrick Mahomes, man. I don't know. I don't have to go too far down the rabbit hole. But I wouldn't blame anybody for having him 2. But I don't know if you can go any lower than 2, in my opinion. Yeah,
I think 2 would probably be just projections wise, kind of where you at least have to have him.
I guess the only caveat, I was going to say, just my last part, the only caveat would be maybe, 4 point per passing touchdown leagues. If you want to maybe grab the running guys first, that I could see that happening maybe. So he goes to 3, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Will, what you have him number 1 as well? What do you think about Patrick?
Zach said it all. I'm not gonna let that stand. That was well said, Zach.
Jeff, anything you want to add to what Zach said?
Since I missed all of what Zach said, if Will said it was well said, that's hard to say. If Will said that was well said, then I'm sticking with it as well.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to, can one of these wide receivers turn into.
One thing though, I do think Kadarius Toney, if he stays healthy, might surprise some people this year. That's about it.
I'd bet on Sky Moore to outperform Kadarius Toney.
You might have to get an off to the side bet. But
yeah, I think for me, even when we go back to college, I was a bigger fan of Sky Moore coming out as a prospect, and I'm going to continue that forward in the NFL. We've seen flashes from both, and we've seen Kadarius Toney not be on the field, and we've seen Sky Moore not be on the field. Coaches' decisions. So we'll see what it looks like this season with the two of them. They drafted Rashee Rice. Like Zach said, Travis Kelce is their number one and their number two option in this offense, really. When you look at it, Travis Kelce, and then Travis Kelce's not open. Patrick Mahomes is running around, and then you'll look back at Travis Kelce, maybe he got open. And then after that, maybe it comes Sky Moore or that kind of range. But I think that, Patrick Mahomes, there's not really too many arguments coming. He's going to be 1, 2, maybe 3 if someone really has a big breakout. But it'll be interesting to see. Our number 2 guy here that we have is Josh Allen. Finished as number 2 last year. I have Josh Allen at 1. Jeff, you have Josh Allen all the way down at number 4, so I'm the highest, you're the lowest. To me, the thing that separates Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes is the rushing yards, the rushing touchdowns. I have it currently for my projections. It is a 6-point per passing touchdown league. I have Burrow at 39 touchdowns, or not Burrow. I have Patrick Mahomes at 39 passing touchdowns and Josh Allen at 34, so there is a 5-touchdown difference there. But Josh Allen makes that back up in the rushing touchdowns and rushing yards. I think if I'm going to pull this back up, but I believe I only have Josh Allen outscoring Patrick Mahomes by 4 points for this season, so it is really close. I think Josh Allen, he definitely has a little bit more questions of, his number 1 target in this offense, Stephon Diggs. We kind of talked about a little bit before the show. Stephon Diggs is currently having some issues, according to Stephon Diggs. He wants to win more. He wants to have the ball in his hands. He wants to have everything go his way, and he wants to win a Super Bowl. It's not really ever going to happen. I'm personally a huge fan of Dalton Kincaid for this upcoming season. I think he's going to be kind of worked in as a slot role in this offense. You get Gabe Davis, a big play guy on the outside, which is what Josh Allen needs. So I just think the only difference between Mahomes and Allen for me is that rushing work. I think the rushing yards is really what made up the difference. In the passing yards don't quite count for as much. So to me, that's what gave. I actually have it as less than 3 points between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. So it was 30 rushing yards made the difference in my projections. Zach, how do you feel about Josh Allen? I believe you had him at number 3 in your rankings. How do you feel about him this season?
I think the top 3 guys, however you have them, or maybe even the top 4 guys, I guess it's kind of hard to really differentiate. I mean, you highlighted it perfectly. You said there was like a 4 or 5 point difference between the 2 guys in your projections. I mean, what's 4,000 yards, 3 straight seasons, 35 to 37 touchdowns every year, like 6 touchdowns on the ground. I think we talked about it last year when they drafted James Cook, and I was like, hey man, this guy can't be the leading rusher for this team every single year. And yeah, he still is. But I think you actually saw a drop off in performance with that injury last year. And I think that's what happens to these big quarterbacks, Cam Newton. Once those injuries start setting in, it's really hard to get that number 1 quarterback ceiling up to back to where he was before. Now Josh Allen's kind of a different guy, and he's defied all the odds, so maybe he could do that. But Dolphins, biased aside, Josh Allen's an incredible quarterback, and I would not fault anybody for taking him as QB1.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good analysis. Jeff, you have him all the way down at 4. Will has him at 3. We'll go to Will first here, see what Will thinks, and then we'll go to you, Jeff, at the lowest person. Will, what do you think?
Look, I love Stephon Diggs, but when he starts having an issue, it affects the team because that's who he is. And I am really nervous for Buffalo because he's not one to just sit. It's not what he's going to be. if he has a problem, God help if they start off slow, or so if he's playing and they start off slow, he is going to become a distraction. And I think that's the worst thing for a team like Buffalo entering a season where there's a lot of pressure building now. They don't do well this year. They don't make Super Bowl this year. They could change coaches. I don't think anybody's safe in Buffalo. So, you know, I just, my gut is I don't think he drops like out of the top 5, but I think he's going to get hurt a couple of games because of the tension. He's going to feel pressure to get the ball to Diggs. The Viking fans tell you the Randy ratio with Mike Tice, all that, it's starting to sound like that, and that makes me nervous with Josh Allen.
And Jeff, you're the lowest on him, so you can kind of piggyback off of what Will said there. Why do you have him below Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, the Steph Diggs thing is one reason, but the defenses now in that division are going to be a lot stronger. Miami, I believe, is going to be a problem. The Jets were already a lightweight problem. I believe they're going to be more of a problem. And the Patriots, I believe, have built up their defense as well. So if you notice after Dayball left, you know, last year, it went from a high caliber year to it was a decent year. It wasn't, you know, what you were really hoping to get if you drafted Josh Allen as the number 1 quarterback. So I think that's going to continue to go. That just like what Will was saying, that Bills, you know, them being elite, kind of the luster kind of came off a little bit last season. They weren't the team that everybody kind of was expecting them to be. They were still one of the top teams in the AFC, but, you know, there were some chinks in their armor, and I think they're going to continue to happen this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that their division definitely has gotten a little bit better. Now you're bringing Aaron Rodgers. This is definitely going to be a high-scoring division when you look at it that way, which is another reason why I have Josh Allen just a little bit ahead of Patrick Mahomes. That they're going to have to score points week in, week out if they want to beat Miami, New York, maybe not New England because, you know, they're not quite on the same level as the Jets and the Dolphins, but they'll still have to put up some points in the AFC, especially. I think that'll be a tough game for them to win. Their defense isn't quite what it used to be. At the beginning of this Josh Allen run, their defense was one of the best in the league, and I don't believe that they're at that point anymore, so it's going to come more down to this offense. But I think you really can't go wrong between Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. I know Zach talked about the top 3 kind of being locked for him. And I know the guy that he has locked in his top 3 is not coming up quite yet, which was kind of interesting. I expected him to be here. I have him lower. Jeff didn't even have him on the list, but we'll talk about him in a bit. Our 3rd overall quarterback that we have projected out comes out as an average of 3.75. Jeff has it 3. Everyone else has him at 4, and that's Joe Burrow. You know, Joe Burrow's got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. He's got the weapons. Joe Mixon's back in a high-powered offense. I really don't think anyone's going to kind of come in here and question what he's going to do through the air. What separates him from Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes just has that big play. You know, he can make something out of nothing, whether that's Travis Kelce or to someone we've never heard of could emerge on the Chiefs this season. Burrow doesn't quite have that same playmaking ability that Mahomes has, and he doesn't have the rushing that Josh Allen has, but I think he's still going to be an elite top-level quarterback this year. Like I said, I have him at 4. Zach, Will, you also have him at 4. Zach, he's just below your other quarterback, so he's kind of a tier down for you. Is there anything you're worried about for Joe Burrow here in this upcoming season, or are you still super excited and you think he's going to be solid?
He's a great quarterback, great character. Love Joe Burrow. But you kind of highlighted it that it's for me where the tear break starts is Joe Burrow. I'll kind of leave the surprise for my other guy for now, but I'll give you a small hint. Joe Burrow doesn't run as much as that guy, you know. So, and that's kind of where the tear break starts for me is these guys that don't have that rushing upside, and you know, we've been the dead horse 1,000 times saying it that rushing quarterbacks are cheat codes in fantasy. So it's really not a slight to Burrow. It's more so what those other guys offer on the ground. But when you have arguably some of the best wide receiving options in the NFL, and you're pretty much locked in with them too for a little bit. So it's the thing for me though is like I don't know if there's another level to what we're going to see from a fantasy output for Joe Burrow. I'm not sure if there's room for him to break into I don't know if we'll ever see a QB1 finish for Joe Burrow or even a QB2 finish, That's kind of why I have him where I have him. But at this top of the list, again, it's, if Joe Burrow can easily win people his fantasy a championship, it's just that ceiling is now kind of starting to lower, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you kind of saw last year he finished as a QB4, and that's kind of around the same way that I'm projecting him for this year. I have him with a couple more touchdowns through the air, and last year he had those 5 rushing touchdowns. I can't see him getting to 5 this year. I have him down at 3, so you kind of even that out. I think his passing yards will probably be around 4,500, which is kind of what we saw last season, which is why I kind of have him right in that QB4 range for me. Jeff, you're the highest on Joe Burrow. Do you see him hitting that extra level that we currently haven't seen from him to put him into that top?
Actually, that's why I have him at 3 and Josh Allen as 4, because of the fact that Burrow is just super consistent at what he does. And I have a feeling that, one, after the Bills lost Devin Singletary, I'm looking at if James Cook is their number 1 back. I'm like, who is going to run the ball at the goal line? I think it is going to be Josh Allen. And I think Josh Allen is going to end up getting hurt. Honestly, that's my prediction for this year. And that's why I went with Joe Burrow over him. Allen's been very durable, but those hits start. Zach, you're the number 1 guy that says that. Burning quarterbacks, eventually they're going to get hurt. This dude's going to get hurt because he is basically their de facto running back without speed. So it's just like they're teeing off this guy at the goal line, and I can just see it. I can see it coming, man. So that is why I went with Burrow slightly over him.
They brought in Damian Harris this year, which I think is kind of a difference in what they've seen, because Damian Harris, we saw in New England, he could easily score 10 touchdowns and not even blink an eye. He's a great goal line back in that respect.
He could end up getting hurt as well, as we've seen.
He could end up getting hurt as well, for sure. I think the thing that separates Josh Allen for me, and it's kind of in the same way that I viewed Cam Newton when he was playing, is he's just so much bigger than anyone else that's coming at him, anyone else that's trying to tackle him. I think he is just so much bigger that I think the injuries, once it happens, and once, you see him miss 4 games in a season, I think it's going to start to try and trail off. He's been able to deal with it so far, and I think that's going to kind of be this next year, and he'll maybe be able to squeeze out 1 more year. But after that, I think it definitely could start to trail off like we saw Cam Newton. As soon as the shoulder was gone, that was it. They're both big play guys through the air and on the ground. And once it goes, it goes. So I see what you mean there with Josh Allen. But like we said, Joe Burrow, everyone thinks he's going to be consistent. Will, anything you want to add before we move on here on Joe Burrow? You think he's going to be a great...
I'm going to let Zach talk for me all night. He's right. The difference is, I'm talking fantasy football, he doesn't run for as many touchdowns. So there you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like we said, they just re-signed Joe Burrow too. So
I'm having a good night.
Yeah. I have to interrupt here. I have a major announcement. My list has to be shaken up because I made a glaring oversight. Everything moves down. That number 5 spot should be occupied by the Eagles quarterback, Jalen Hurts. I apologize to you, Jalen. He called me. That's who I was talking to earlier. I forgot to go ahead and bring this up. He just texted me again. It was like, dude, what are you doing? Why am I still not on your list? He should be my number 5. I know we're getting to that number pretty soon, so that's why I wanted to bring that up. I will go ahead and tell you I'm taking my number 9 guy off the list, moving everybody down. Number 10, shocking everybody because he's staying on my list. We'll get to that.
So you're putting Jalen Hurts at 5.
I'm putting Jalen Hurts at 5.
And I believe that brings him up into our 4th spot, which is the next quarterback. Zach and Will, you guys both have Jalen Hurts at 2. Jeff now has Jalen Hurts at 5. I much rather preferred when Jeff was the lowest on Jalen Hurts. And I have Jalen Hurts all the way down at 8.
Oh, dang.
He had 13 rushing touchdowns last season. I project that to come back down to 10, which is what we saw in his previous season. I think the passing touchdowns and the passing yards come down a little bit. That's kind of what we see with these rushing quarterbacks as they get their peak season and things kind of start to come back to earth a little bit. They lost Miles Sanders, but they added DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny, so they're going to get those guys involved a little bit more. So I see it personally as a natural regression in terms of Jalen Hurts. I'll let you guys talk about him a little bit. Zach and Will, we'll let you guys go first because you guys both have him at 2, and then I'll come back in at the end to kind of just say a couple little things. But Zach, you have Jalen Hurts at 2. Will seems to agree with everything you say so far tonight. We're going to let you go first, and Will just say, yep, exactly what Zach said. So why do you have Jalen Hurts at number 2?
Yeah, Will, I'll have that check in the mail for you, bud.
There you go.
Back-to-back, first quarterback ever, double-digit back-to-back seasons rushing touchdowns. And he had less rushing yards last year than he did prior to the season before. You could argue he has the best wide receiver core in the entire NFL, and you sprinkle in DeAndre Swift now, Rashad Penny. You got a healthy Dallas Goedert coming back. I mean, man, the last time we watched Jalen Hurts play, what was his stats in the Super Bowl? I don't have him in front of me, but I mean, this guy can not only get it done, he can get it done on the ground and in the air. So for me, there's still a ceiling. Unlike, in my opinion, Joe Burrow, I think there's still even another tier that Jalen Hurts can take it to if he can just kind of hone in on the passing game. Obviously, that goal line, fall forward with Jalen Hurts is virtually unstoppable. Every team seems to struggle against that, and that's where he gets the majority of his rushing touchdowns. But I can see a scenario where, kind of the against it would be Rashad Penny coming in and vulturing a lot of those touchdowns away. And if Zach's right and he does throw for 3,500 yards, I think you're going to be disappointed if you do take him in the top 3. But I also have a big announcement as well. Wide receiver Denzel Mims has been traded to the Detroit Lions. So I'm going to throw Jared Goff my top 10 now for sure. But yeah, not to get off track, but yeah, I'll go pass it over to Will for Hurts.
Yeah, Will, what on Jalen Hurts?
I just think I don't think their running back situation is settled. I think as the season goes on, he's just going to score running touchdowns. And like Zach said, it's the fall forward thing. Like that's the most amazing. Honestly, I think that's the most amazing play in football right now. That it's coming, what they're going to do, and nobody can stop it. And it's not just getting 1 yard; it's getting 3-4 yards. Mm-hmm. Right? It is the most amazing play right now in football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely been hard to stop. Jeff, you added him into your top 10 at the last minute here. What do you want to say about Jalen Hurts?
He's kind of proven what I thought he was going to be. I was one of the people that when Big Ben was on his way out, I was begging the Steelers to draft this dude because I thought he would be a great replacement for him. And it's kind of proven me right. I think he'd been great in their system as well. But he is the only thing that's dropped him down for me is with the offensive coordinator being gone. There's usually always a small step back when that happens. The one thing that I do like about him, that fall forward play is great. I don't see any of the running backs coming in and vulturing a lot of stuff. One, you got 2 that will probably be hurt for some of the games. But then again, the Eagles got like 19 running backs and they still haven't done it. So he's going to, things are set up for him. Running plays, passing plays. Again, like Zach was saying, he does have a pretty good wide receiver core. I think there's another bird group that actually has a little bit better receiving core down in the Washington area, but those are the things. Those are the things.
Yeah, like I said, I've gone through and I've just statted out all these quarterbacks, kind of what I project. I have 20 less completions for Jalen Hurts, 200 less yards, 1 less passing touchdown, 3 less rushing touchdowns are the main things. And I have him at 8 interceptions on the year as opposed to the 6 he had last year. And that brought him down to the 8th spot for me. I think that's something that we could definitely naturally see, just that natural regression, a couple less completions, a couple less yards. And even keeping the touchdowns the same, the rushing touchdowns come down, I think, is kind of a natural progression as well. Like I said, he was the first quarterback to ever have 2 back-to-back double-digit rushing touchdowns. I have him projected to be the first ever to be 3 back-to-back double digits, but will that be in that 12-13 range like we saw last year, or will it come back down to 10? I just think there's a couple more guys that I like a little bit better, like this next guy we're going to talk about. If you want to talk about rushing quarterbacks, you cannot get better than Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson on the ground, you're probably going to see him go for, close to 1,000 yards, where I think Jalen Hurts kind of tops out around 700-800. So you add that into the fact that this offense is supposed to now be under Monken, supposed to be a throwing offense, so he's going to get those yards, and have him for around the same amount of passing passing yards as Jalen Hurts. I have Lamar throwing for a few more touchdowns, but I actually have Jalen Hurts rushing for 4 more touchdowns. I have Lamar Jackson all the way up at 3. Jeff has him at 2, which is why Jeff has run away, because he had Lamar Jackson at 2, so he figured he didn't want to defend that. And Zach and Will, who could ever predicted you guys are thinking the exact same? You guys both have Lamar Jackson all the way down.
Great minds.
6. They're just uncanny, these two. But yeah, I think 900 rushing yards for Lamar Jackson, 6 rushing touchdowns on the ground. That's what I have him projected for there. I have him for 31 passing touchdowns, 3,500 yards. So nothing really too crazy there. I think if he's healthy, which I'm going to project in this new offense, so he's going to be healthy for all 17 games. Maybe he sits out the 16th game. We'll see how the season goes on. But I think that's kind of around the range he's going to be. And as Zach has mentioned before, rushing quarterbacks get a lot of fantasy points. You get 1 point for every 10 rushing yards, or 1 point for every 25 passing yards in most of your standard leagues. And Lamar Jackson just kind of owns that category. So he's 3 for me. Zach, obviously Jeff's not here to defend having him at 2, but Zach and Will, you guys both have him at 6. Will, can we get you to speak first on Lamar Jackson? And then Zach can just piggyback off of what you say.
So I think he's going to be higher than what I have him. I'm just uncomfortable putting it in there because I don't know how much he's really going to run. To be honest with you, I think he's getting older, and I think he's very aware of trying to prolong his career. So I don't know how much he's going to run. And I'm a little worried how long it takes him to really get going with the wide receivers. And I think it's going to take a game or two. And you know how the Ravens are, right? I mean, it's not like they're putting up 50 a game. Right? So it just makes me nervous. I think there's too much talent there to go lower than 6. But if he came in 2nd or 3rd, I wouldn't be shocked.
No, I think one thing that we touch on is J.K. Dobbins. I think a lot of people in the fantasy community are projecting him to have probably one of his best seasons yet. And I just wonder how much that eats into the rushing upside, especially like Zach said, when you consider the fact that this may be more of a passing offense with the addition of Odell Beckham, with drafting Zay Flowers, who I heard isn't really lighting it up. Big shocker, a Boston College wide receiver isn't that great. But he still has Mark Andrews. So you're 100% right, Will. Shocker, I agree with you that he could definitely finish in the top 2, and I would not, blink at all at that. But I think there are some variables that are different, and this isn't year 3 for Lamar Jackson. Now we're going into what? We're going to year 6 here. The human body can only take so much, and he's not a big dude by any means. No. J.K. Dobbins has a great season, and this offense shifts more to a pass first. I don't know how for me, that's where I would see him finishing. An optimal season would be 5-6 in that area, but you're 100% right. The upside is top 3 quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I said. It's really the rushing for me. I think that as low as this offense is going to be pass first, Lamar Jackson is not an elite thrower of the football. We all know that. And when it comes down to, he can check it down to a running back and they can get 10 yards or he can get 10 yards on the ground. And I think he still has the speed, which is important for a quarterback. He can break off a 50-yard run and score a touchdown that way, whereas some other quarterbacks don't really have that upside. I think there's one more quarterback we're going to talk about today who has that upside, but really him and this other quarterback are really the only ones that can break off. I don't think Jalen Hurts is breaking off multiple 50-yard runs next season, where I can see Lamar Jackson and this other quarterback we're going to talk about later could do that. But we're going to switch it off here. Jeff obviously didn't want to defend his Lamar Jackson being second overall quarterback take, but we're going to move on here to a guy I think we can all kind of agree is kind of Zach's the highest on him, got him at 5. Jeff and I have him at 6, and we'll have him at 7. So we're all kind of in agreement here. Justin Herbert, not really sure we have to go too in depth here. I think Justin Herbert's going to be a great quarterback this year. They added Quentin Jefferson, so that adds obviously that way you're not Quentin Johnston. They added him. That adds to Mike Williams and Keenan Allen there. A great trio of wide receivers. Gerald Everett's been pretty good. And Austin Eckler out of the backfield, I think with Kellen Moore in this offense, there really is a higher ceiling than we've ever seen for Justin Herbert before, because Kellen Moore we saw in Dallas, Dak Prescott throws for 5,000 yards. So I think those are numbers we could see out of Justin Herbert this year. I think I have him projected for just under that 5,000-yard mark, but not much under it. I think this offense is going to be pass heavy. Austin Eckler is kind of up in the air if he wants more money, and he kind of got his extension or his reworked contract that he wanted. So they're just going to keep throwing the ball like a Kellen Moore offense will. And I think it's going to be right around that 5, 6, 7 range for Justin Herbert. Do either of you guys see Zach? You're the highest on him. Do you see where he's going to break into the top 5 like you haven't projected? You think that rushing work comes with it, or you think it's the Kellen Moore passing offense that really bumps him up into there?
Not only that too, but he's unlike some of these guys we've talked about. He's finished as QB2 before, so he has the track record of finishing in that. So he's got that upside. You figure I know that there was some sort of talks of shoulder injuries as well with him, but I think he's healthy going into the season. I think the offense is definitely going to take a step forward with Kellen Moore. I think his weapons. If Keenan Allen can just stay, at least one of them. If him and Mike Williams can just stay on the field for a handful of games together, Justin Herbert could be QB1, man. His arm talent is right up there with Patrick Mahomes. He's super athletic. He's a big guy, and he's got a good young offensive line, and arguably one of the best running backs in the NFL. Not only just one of the best running backs in the NFL, like a Josh Jacobs character. It's a pass catching guy, Austin Eckler. Talk about dump offs. 20 touchdowns each season. It seems like for Austin Eckler's, it's crazy. So that's kind of where I have him, and I think I catch a lot of heat for being biased with my Dolphins, but I have all the quarterbacks that were drafted in the same class as Tua ahead of him. So just throwing that caveat in there.
Yeah, I mean you're definitely right on there, Will. What do you want to say about Justin Herbert here quickly before we move?
There's so much talent on this offense. It's scary.
Mm-hmm.
They are legitimate 3 wide receivers. Like 3, Johnson's going to be I think he's being maybe the best wide receiver 3 this year when it's all done and said. No pressure.
Yeah, well, what about KJ Osborne here? Come on.
No, dude. He has 2 guys to go over the top. Mm-hmm. That scares me, that offense with Johnson with 3 wide receiver sets. And then the running backs kind of worked its way out, so there's not that distraction. Woo! He's going to put up a lot of passing touchdowns.
Justin Herbert is who we're talking about here, Jeff.
I'll thank you. I was when I heard KJ Osborne, I was like, wait a minute.
No. We didn't quite get all the way down.
That's coming later.
Okay. I'm sorry. Some Eagles fans were throwing stuff at my house. I had to go out there and be like, look, man, I put them on the list.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, we're the real bird team.
Why Why is Jalen Hurts in Sacramento?
No, his Eagles fans. I guess he called.
Okay.
Yeah. Jalen
There's
Hurts
a
has the
small
connection.
Eagles contingent here, so.
Mhm.
I didn't know Eagles fans even left the city of Philadelphia. So that's
There's a few. There's a few, man.
Mhm.
Fly, Eagles, fly. They flew all the way here.
Let's move on here quickly. We got a couple more guys we want to talk about. Trevor Lawrence comes in at number 7. Trevor Lawrence is a guy that I personally was extremely high on last year. I said at the beginning of the offseason, Trevor Lawrence was going to be your top 12 quarterback. And what did he end up being? He ended up fishing around that quarterback 7 to 8 range.
Yep.
Jeff and Will both have him projected to be in their top 5 this season. That's supposed to be Zach saying top 5. But I guess Will and Jeff really took this one over. I have him at 7, and Zach has him at 8. So Zach and I are kind of around where he was last year. I love Trevor Lawrence. That offense in Jacksonville has some talent in it. You add Calvin Ridley to it this year, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not so sure that this Doug Peterson offense can really go too much forward from where it was last year. The running backs really weren't getting targeted out of the backfield last year. Travis Etienne had the running backs themselves had 14% target share. That'll probably stay around the same with the addition of Calvin Ridley. I think Calvin Ridley can have a good season, but I think that comes at an expense of Zay Jones and Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. So I'm not really sure if there's too much more he can do in fantasy football unless he just somehow falls into the end zone 4 or 5 more times on the ground. Then I think he can find himself his way up this list. But just passing-wise, I think he's definitely a tier below a few of the other guys that we've talked about for fantasy perspective. Jeff and Will, we'll let you guys go first. You have him taking a step forward and finishing top 5. Jeff, why do you think Trevor Lawrence can be a top 5 quarterback?
AFC South. Pretty much everybody is rebuilding. The Titans weren't like a great defense to begin with. Indy, they're going through all kind of stuff. We don't know what to expect from them. And then you got the Texans who, even though they got DeMeco Ryans as their head coach, should bring a good defensive pedigree to that team. I think it's going to be too soon. I think Doug Peterson's got a lot of experience at running pretty decent offenses, and I think he's shown that he's got a more talented quarterback than he did at any time with the Eagles, including Carson Wentz and Nick Foles. So I think you're seeing that right now. What's that?
That's not saying much.
How dare you?
That's what I'm saying. Well,
Nick like that.
Yeah, Carson Wentz was real close to being an MVP before he got hurt. But I think we're seeing what he's actually put together here. As a matter of fact, the whole offense is better than the team that I think the Eagles won the Super Bowl with, as far as receiver-wise, maybe not running back-wise, but I'm thinking it's close. I think they got to steal even in Tank Bigsby. They've got a deep – that offense is a well-put-together offense, man. And I think they're going to be – I don't think last year was a fluke. I think they're going to be pretty they're definitely going to win the AFC South, and I think they're going to be a team to be reckoned with as well.
Yeah, I think they're a legit team, but the thing that worries me is we talk about guys like Josh Allen who are going to have to put up points to win games in their division. Trevor Lawrence might only have to play 1.5 quarters to be able to beat the Texans and the Colts.
Leave them in.
And maybe even the Titans, depending on how their season goes. So I think there's definitely going to be games that Trevor Lawrence might not see the fourth quarter in. I have him projected for 6 more passing touchdowns and almost 200 more yards, a couple more completions. I think that there's definitely still going to be some natural progression as he continues to develop. I have him for a few more interceptions than he had last year, but he had 5 rushing touchdowns last year. I don't see a way where he has 5 rushing touchdowns again this year. I think with Tank Bigsby being in there, he's going to see some of this goal line work, and I think they're going to be working on ways to throw the ball more. Doug Peterson's offense was amazing, when the Eagles were in it. I want to see how he continues to develop his offense and adapt to the way the NFL keeps moving. So it's just a couple of things where I think he's going to, have some natural progressions, but I don't think it's necessarily going to come at the expense of more fantasy points. Will, what do you think about Trevor Lawrence? You also have him top 5.
I have him at 5 more because I wasn't sure about Lamar and Tua, to be honest with you. But I think he, honestly, of all the quarterbacks, I think his ceiling might be the highest this year in fantasy. Because we don't know. Like, you saw last year, but you still don't know. Like, Jacksonville could really AFC South for 6 games, NFC South for 4 games. There's 10 games right there where, honestly,
he doesn't have to play the third quarter.
Right, but he might score 40 in the first half. And so, it's just, I think his ceiling – because he's a young guy, this might be the highest where we don't know where it could. I mean, he could throw 4 or 5 touchdowns a game. Literally. Look at that schedule. He could average 4 or 5 touchdowns.
But they'll be running the ball too much is where I think it'll be. Between Bigsby and ETN, I think they're going to be in games that they know that they're going to be able to control the time of possession. They're going to be able to control the pace. And I think that they're going to be running all over teams. I like what they have in an offensive line. So I think Trevor Lawrence, I'm still a huge fan of Trevor Lawrence. Like I said, I have him at 8. Yeah. Just a couple guys, more rushing upside that I like above him. Zach, what do you think about Trevor Lawrence here quickly before we move on?
Yeah, I'll just wrap it up real fast. Just, I think the AFC South being terrible rings familiar to last year. I was saying that the AFC West was going to be this incredible superstar-filled division. And I think that there's a chance that these teams are actually a lot more impressive than we're giving them credit for. And to be fair, some of Trevor Lawrence's worst games last year came against the Texans. So at the same time,
those worst games were because he didn't have to.
Right. I mean, they lost to the Texans. I think it was 13-6 last year in like week 5. So obviously they couldn't get the ball in the end zone. 2 field goals there, or either that or it was a missed field goal attempt. But I think we last year was who Trevor Lawrence is. I think that's who this offense is. Now, if you want to say Calvin really comes along and brings him to that next tier, I don't see any fault in that logic. So yeah, I guess it really all depends on I guess Ridley adding that next. Like, is he the Stefan Diggs for what Josh Allen? Is he the Tyreek Hill for Tua?
Yeah.
That would be the only thing that would propel him higher, in my opinion.
Well, we're gonna move on here, and you just brought up here that Tyreek Hill to his Tua Tagovailoa comes in at our 8th overall fantasy football quarterback. Zach, Jeff, you have him at 7. Will, you have him at 8. I have him at 10. He's going to be great. Can he stay on the field? I have him projected for 4,200 yards, 34 passing touchdowns. I think some of the interception problems we saw last year are things that we're going to continue to see work into this year. I have him for 12 interceptions. And I have him for 2 touchdowns on the ground. I think if he can stay healthy and he can kind of put these head injuries behind him, he might be able to get, another rushing touchdown, a few more rushing yards than I have projected for. And that will definitely propel him up. He's got amazing wide receivers. You talk about some of the best wide receivers in the game. He's got Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. At the tight end position, it's not really anything that's going to stand out. I think Durham Smythe is better than a lot of people would give him credit for. I think I currently don't have all of the tight ends projected out for this season, but I have him projected for a lot more points than I think a lot of other people I've seen have him projected for. I have him with just under 100 fantasy points on the season. I think the touchdowns will be there, and I think he'll get some targets. And I think the running backs that they have, Wilson, A-Chain, and Mostert can all catch the ball out of the backfield. They're going to be able to relieve the running game enough. And in a Mike McDaniel offense, I think the sky's the limit for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle at wide receiver position, and that means Tua is going to be great. So like I said, 4,200 yards, 34 passing touchdowns. If he can cut those interceptions down, he would move up, I think, 4 or 5 spots. In my rankings, we're kind of in a tier there. where just little things can make the difference. Zach, you and Jeff are the highest on him. You are our resident Dolphins fan. What are your projections for Tua going forward next season?
Man, it's people talk about the head injury, and that's all fair, and the interceptions, but I think the biggest thing for Tua is Teron Armstead staying healthy. If he's not there to protect Tua, I watched it live. It's not fun. It's a totally different offense. I don't know what the splits are, but it's definitely a step backwards for Tua. I also think this team got a little bit of a big head halfway through the season. I think Mike McDaniels kind of took the league by storm. Like I said, I watched in person, just making silly plays, and those resulted in those interceptions for Tua. When we could have just been a little more conservative, with the ground game. It's when you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on the same field, as well as arguably the fastest running back room in the league. It's easy to see Tua being a product of the offense that he's on, not necessarily him being this do-it-all player. And to be fair, he did get 6, of his total touchdowns in one game last year. There is certainly room for doubt. I don't love the whole injury thing, because it seems like we only pick and choose which players we use that argument for. Last year, everyone was saying Christian McCaffrey's not injury prone when he missed way more time than Tua did. Yet he was still the number one, consensus for some people. So I don't like the injury thing, because any person at any time can get injured, right? Did anybody think Damar Hamlin was going to have his heart explode last year? No. So it's hard to predict that, but I also understand that, yes, if he gets another concussion, there's a very good chance we never see him play football again. But he did get a full sleeve tattoo. He looks like a total beefcake. And he's still a young dude. Like, let's give him a little bit more time to beef up, and hopefully that offensive line can stay a little bit stronger.
Yeah, I think for me, as a Panthers fan, I saw concussions ruin Luke Kuechly's career. And he retired before he turned 30. And I know that concussions are a big part of the game, and I think that concussions are just a little bit different than, your ankle injury, your shoulder injury, and that kind of stuff. And I think that these head injuries are definitely something that I think if he gets another concussion, there's a chance he's done for his entire NFL career. So I think that concussions can happen all the time. Right. Especially as they continue to improve their concussion protocols and that kind of stuff. I think that it's definitely an issue. I didn't project to miss any games in my projections, but I think it comes into a risk factor when looking at him in comparison to some of these other guys. I think it definitely is a risk. I know, Will, you have a little bit more knowledge when it comes to this concussion aspect of things. You have him at a little higher than me. You have him at 8. Are you worried about the concussions, or you think?
Yeah, and the only reason I have him in the top 10 is I think if he can stay healthy, I think he could be top 3 if he's healthy. There's too much talent around him, real talent that creates opportunities for any quarterback, right? Then you take someone like Tua, who has God-given ability to do what he does. Mm-hmm. He should be a top 10 fantasy quarterback. Whether or not he makes it through the season, I don't know. I think this is make or break for Tua. If he gets another concussion this year, at some point, the league is going to shut him down.
Right.
That's the league's going to say,
it'll be
take this risk.
It'll be the league before Tua himself steps away.
Yeah, it'll be all the doctors and the league and teams.
Yeah, because no doctor is going to keep clearing him, knowing that they are then liable for clearing him. Mm-hmm. That's right. And even the team physician, who we know gets a lot of pressure to clear guys every week, at some point they have to protect their license too. Mm-hmm. And that's messed up to say, but it's the truth. So at what point, with all this hype on him about what's happened with the concussion, if he gets one and it's bad, like if he gets one that we didn't see and it comes out like a day after the game, maybe that's a different thing. But if he gets hit and he's on the ground and he's out, he's done. Yeah. It'll be over for him as a quarterback in the NFL.
He starts throwing gang signs up again.
Yeah. That'd definitely be tough. Jeff, I think we've all kind of talked about he could finish in the top 5. We just don't currently have him there. Jeff, you and Zach are the highest on him. Anything you want to add here?
Yeah, honestly, that's just what Zach was saying about the game that he had 6 touchdowns in.
Mhm.
That's something I can see in a lot of games
Yeah.
if he's healthy. And then what the other thing is, also him bulking up, but I think Mike McDaniel's going to work out a scheme for him to get the ball out of his hand quicker. I was watching some video on Tyreek Hill at I don't know if it was his camp or somebody's camp, but just showing kids what to do on breaks to get separation. And it seems like he is on a mission, man. And if he's able, he's one of those guys where you don't have to hit him on a 50-yard bomb. You hit him with a 10-yard slant or something, and he's a dude that can score. I can see that happening a lot this year. Him getting the ball out to both receivers, to the guys coming out of the backfield, and I can just see him racking up yards and getting touchdowns on, just chunk plays, basically. So that's why I'm keeping him in there.
Yeah, I think it really is a product of the system. He's a great quarterback, and he's got all the weapons around him. We can move on to number 9 here. This is really a guy I want to talk about since I'm so much higher on him, apparently, than everyone else. I have Deshaun Watson as my 5th ranked quarterback. Jeff has him at 8. Zach has him at 12, and he didn't make Will's top 10 list. I have him projected for 4,000 yards, 36 passing touchdowns, 4 touchdowns on the ground, and around 370 yards on the ground. And I think those are definitely numbers that he can make. It all comes down to what this Cleveland Browns offense is going to be. I also have Nick Chubb being a top 3 fantasy running back for this upcoming season, which I think is something we're going to talk about next week. So they'll have to stay tuned for that. But I fully believe this Browns offense is going to be something special. Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, I both have projected to do fairly well. I like Cedric Tillman, who they just drafted this year. I think he's going to be a great outside wide receiver. I think he sends Donovan Peoples-Jones down to the bench. And I think, we kind of saw it at the end of last season as Watson started to kind of get a little bit more familiar in the offense, give him an entire offseason. I think he can return to being, what we saw he was a top 4 quarterback before in the NFL, and maybe he doesn't get to that top 4 again, but if he's top 5, top 6, top 7, I think he could easily finish in this offense that I project to score lots of points in the division with the Bengals and the Ravens, and the Steelers are there too. Kind of like the AFC East here, where 3 of the 4 teams are going to score lots of points this season. So I think that this offense is going to have to score lots of points. I believe in Deshaun Watson. I believe in the talent that they have put around him. David Njoku at the tight end position as well. I think that he's going to be extremely, extremely important. And I think he's going to perform well. Jeff, you have him at 8. Anything you want to add on Deshaun Watson's case before we talk to Zach and Will, who have him outside the top 10?
I think with a full offseason, and I'm sure he was working, right after the season on regaining. I'm not going to say he'll get back to the top 3, but I think he is going to definitely, now that he'll have full familiarity with the playbook, like you said, the players that they've added around him, he can't do anything but to get back to his Pro Bowl form. So I'm looking for that to happen this year.
And Zach, you have him at 12. Do you think there's a chance he could hop into the top 10, or are you just hesitant? You want to see it before you project it?
Like with most of my rankings, it really comes down to guys just getting knocked down based on where I have other guys, so that's kind of just where he fell, and would I be shocked to see him in the top 10? No, of course not. This guy's he was a great quarterback when his days in Houston. I think the Cleveland Browns helmet is cursed, and I think anybody who wears it sucks. And I think you have the best running back in the NFL, pure running back, not pass catching running back. So that kind of takes away from that side of things. And I just don't know if I'm confident he'll never return back to that top tier fantasy quarterback, but I'm also kind of confident that he's not really going to be that great of a quarterback in general. I don't know if he didn't really show too much. And I think sometimes that time away from the game is a lot more detrimental than it it really kind of seems on paper. And that division, you mentioned it, Zach. I think that's actually kind of a negative in this thing, because these are such hard-fought games. This isn't a high-flying AFC West showdown. This is a kind of a ground-and-pound, brutal defensive slugfest, and I think Pittsburgh is going to somehow manage to go 500 again. So they're going to inevitably win, at least 9 games. So I don't know. Just there's something about Deshaun Watson and the Browns and Amari Cooper. Like, is he really going to continue to ascend? It just doesn't seem like there's too much there for me to get him in the top 10. That's all.
That's fair. Will, anything you want to add here before we move on? We want to wrap this up.
I think Deshaun has the biggest gap between floor and ceiling this season.
Yep.
And the one thing new offense and all that, something's just not right. I'm sorry, it's just not right. And even he missed all those games last year. So what was he doing? What was he doing all those games?
We know what he's doing.
So his percentages on completions were 62, 68, 67, 70. So he's ascending, right? And then last year it's 58%. They had talent last year. And so I'm worried. Now, he could be a top 5 guy, honestly, or he could be 20 and below. So if you're taking Deshaun Watson, understand it's feast or famine. And I don't even think you could say for sure he's the top 15, because he could be washed, guys. It's not like we haven't seen cornerbacks go from really good to out of the league in a year or two.
Yeah, he could. Like you said, he's got a high range from, to me, his ceiling could be top 2, and his floor could be outside the top 20.
Yeah, great.
And that's a really big range. I'm currently projecting him to be close to that top. I gotta, make sure I'm projecting this Browns offense to actually be feasible, since I have Nick Chubb in the top 3 and Deshaun Watson in the top 5. I gotta go make sure these numbers are all adding up and making sense.
It's a good season for the Browns.
Yeah, in a tough division. I mean, it's in bad weather. Like, there's a lot of stuff here that it should be a red flag to everybody.
Yeah,
I think if you draft Watson, you got to pair him with another quarterback.
Yeah,
1,000%.
In redraft leagues.
Yeah, because I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Zach.
I was just gonna say your point to the running back quarterback thing. I think if you look at the correlation of rankings, I don't know if you look at the running backs versus who their quarterbacks are. I don't think the consensus top running backs, their quarterbacks would show up on this list, if that makes sense.
They're not.
Right.
You got, other than Herbert.
Right. Herbert would be the only one.
Probably around 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson's not on this list. You just go down the list.
Purdy, or whoever the
49ers
running back, quarterback is. So, yeah, your point is kind of valid there, and that's kind of my whole thing. I think Nick Chubb is the offense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think he definitely could be. We got one more guy who made our consensus top 10. We'll just let everyone quickly talk about the guys who made their list, so we can wrap it up here. Zach and I both have Justin Fields as our 9th-ranked quarterback. Jeff and Will, you guys both didn't have him on your list. I don't really think there's too much to talk about. I think his passing can take a little bit of a step further than what it was last year with DJ Moore there. Just a little bit, maybe get 200-300 yards more. And on the ground, I think he's going to be a 1,000-yard rusher. He's still that offense for me. He's going to get 1,000 yards on the ground. He can get those touchdowns. And if passing takes a step forward.
He is going to get hurt this year, because the Bears don't know what the hell they're doing on offense.
Wow.
The Bears as an organization are putting too much on this young man, and him saving them from a bad offensive scheme. It's all about him correcting in real time the flaws that they have. Mm-hmm. And that you only take so many hits. And I'm telling you, if I'm the Bears, I'm worried about him making it through this season.
Yeah, I think
teams are going to tee off on him. Teams are going to be like, "You're not beating us with your legs. You're going to have to prove to me you could throw the ball consistently. I'm going to put a linebacker or a safety in your face every play, and I'm going to make you prove me wrong." And I'm telling you, he can't do that. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I don't see him doing it based on what we've seen so far.
I think he can. I think the addition of DJ Moore is a big addition. He's got a good tight end in Cole Kmet. And, you got Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool. He's got some talent, definitely at these skill positions. The running backs take a big hit with David Montgomery not being that this year. So does that negatively affect him as a rushing quarterback or positively affect him?
What can we say? What are the Bears thinking? They $32 million under the cap. What are they thinking? It's almost like I don't know what their front office like. Are they waiting for next year's draft? It's not like the NFC North isn't wide open.
Mm-hmm.
The NFC North is wide open. I don't know if anyone. I'm a Viking fan. Okay, could. I think we maybe all agree that the Packers are probably going to step back, but you never know. The Lions look like a good bet, but it's the Lions. The Bears have a chance to do something, and they're sitting on cap space, and they're doing nothing. If I'm a Bear fan, I'm pissed with what this team is doing right now.
Especially when you got a quarterback on a rookie deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zach, what do you want to say about Justin Fields here? You have him in your top 10 as well. You think it really is just this rushing floor that he's going to have?
Yep, and Will made some really great points, and just talk about a guy that's considered an injury risk. I mean, a guy that runs for 100-something yards every single game definitely would be a factor in there. But the only thing I will push back on is that the defense is forcing him to throw. I think they were trying to do that last year already. I just think his athleticism and his escapability is truly what his running ability is up there. It could be him and Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson are the guys. So as far as those big breakaway runs, and I like Zach said too was another great point, which is why he's in my top 10 is because the addition of DJ Moore, Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet. That's a pretty solid surrounding cast. But if they're 32 under the cap and couldn't get a little more talent around him, it's kind of upsetting.
You're watching the Lions try for Mims,
right?
I mean, let's not pretend like Mims is good at football.
No, but the Lions, you can tell the Lions are buying into who they are.
Right.
Right? The Lions are believing, hey, why not us? The Bears are acting like, nah, it's not us. Not going to be us.
They brought in Foreman at the running back position. They drafted Roschon Johnson. I think they have with Khalil Herbert, they can have an okay running game with Justin Fields. Like I said, there's a lot of people who have Fields getting into their top 5, and I just don't have that because I don't believe he can develop as a passer enough to do that. But I think his rushing floor.
17 touch. Okay, so first year he's injured 4 games. He was only injured 1 game last year, but injured 4 games first year. First year 7 TDs, 10 INTs. Last year 17 TDs, 11 INTs. I mean, I get it. He's full of potential. He's a great highlight package to watch, but it's the Bears are just. I guess if I was a Bear fan, I would be very upset with what this team is doing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the biggest difference for me is I have him at 2,800 yards, 24 passing touchdowns. So I think he can jump that with DJ Moore, Chase Claypool, and Darnell Mooney for an entire season. 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns on the ground. So I think that's really the big difference is those passing touchdowns I expect to go up. Jeff, what do you want to say here?
I just want to see him with another year under his belt because the narrative went from this guy might be someone who they're going to trade and try to bring in another quarterback this year in the draft to now this dude could be in the top 5 quarterbacks. And it's just like, nobody was really expecting anything from the Bears anyway, and now it's like he's had a couple of games where he has done some amazing things, but it wasn't like, to me, they were kind of like unexpected because they were unexpected. It was like, okay, yeah, we didn't think that he would be this elusive and be able to do this. Well, now defenses are going to go back and be like, we're going to be ready for this year. Again, looking at the defenses that he faced last year, they weren't that great in that division either. I think there's going to be a little bit different this year, especially from the Lions. I think they're going to have to put a better defense on the field. So
and look at his game log last year. So first week, 132 yards rushing against the Lions. Then he hit 147 against the Lions again. Then the following week against the Dolphins, he hit 178. But as you look at the rest of the season, he only broke 60 twice. The last 4 weeks, he didn't get over 52.
Yeah, he started to throw the Cole Kmet a little bit in those games.
He was. I think he was also injured. I think that game you said he missed, that injury he had. I think if you look at the game log, I think it lines up with that. I think after that he really stopped running, or just couldn't. He just might have just been too banged up. So yeah, the injury point is valid.
Yeah.
That comes with all your rushing quarterbacks.
I think people started to see what he did rushing wise and immediately looked at Jalen Hurts. I think Jalen Hurts is in a much more disciplined team and organization, and they have things set for him. It just seemed like Justin Fields just did things on his own that they weren't even necessarily set for him. It's like he ran because nobody was open, and he was able to beat a guy here or there and then explode. He is a fast player. But I think once defenses start to watch that, I think that might cut some things down. And I just think there are a couple of safer options.
Yeah, I think he'll break a few touchdowns, long rushing touchdowns, which is why, like I said at the beginning, earlier on in the show, at least him and Lamar are the guys that I can see running for multiple 50-yard plays this year. That rounds out our consensus top 10. We got a couple guys that were left off the list as some of us had ranked in the top 10. Will had a couple more NFC North guys, Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff. Kirk Cousins, Will being a Vikings fan, obviously, but Kirk Cousins has always just been consistent around that area. In between 9 and 13, he'll probably finish in there again. Addition of Jordan Addison, I would assume, is what Will would want to point out.
No, it's the two tight end.
Two tight ends?
With signing Oliver, not only did they sign Oliver from the Ravens, they paid him. Like, it wasn't like they are going to a two tight end set. And I think that's interesting for Kirk Cousins. I think the coaching staff watched what happened when they added Hawkinson. And then Oliver's, not only is he good catch receiving tight end, he's becoming one of the better blocking tight ends in the league. I think the Vikings are realizing that every defense is built for the 3 wide receiver set and playing dime and nickel. And I think it'll be interesting. It's either going to be a disaster or it's going to be amazing. And it kind of fits. And I thought this before, but watching the NFL quarterback thing on Netflix makes me thinking more. The Vikings watched what happened to Kirk last season. He got hit too much. So what do you do? Like, how do you adjust to that when you know this guy's physical capabilities are what they are? So going to a 2 tight end set with 2 receiving threats and the 2 wide receivers in a single back, I think it sets up better actually for Kirk in the passing game. Gives him an extra blocker. It allows them to do different things. I think you'll see the Vikings actually play more that base offense than they play 3 wide receivers this year. And so I think in a weird way, adding that second tight end, which goes against the whole rest of the league, is a much different feel. But for Kirk Cousins' strength, it makes very much sense, right? He's not a mobile quarterback. He's going to sit in the pocket. So you better protect him, and you better give him options that can work the flats in the middle of the field.
Yeah, they brought Oliver in to be a blocking tight end more than anything. In my opinion, I think he's a top blocking tight end. I'm not sure he has that receiving aspects that some of these other top tight ends have.
But remember they didn't bring him in as a number 1. He's the number 2.
They brought him in as a number 2, and I think I think they brought him in to play in that 2 tight end role to be the blocking tight end, and he's going to be great at that. They kind of want to run this whole Tennessee offense or this old Vikings offense that Zimmer run when you were able to get, different guys into the NFC Championship game or close to it like the Vikings were before with, I can't remember what his name is off the top of my head.
Case Keenum.
Case Keenum. Yeah, when you were able to get a team with Case Keenum deep into the playoffs is kind of what they need to run with this offense here in Minnesota. I think there's a chance. I currently have Kirk Cousins at 13. He'll finish in between that range, 9 to 13 range. You also had Jared Goff brought up in your top 10. I think that this Lions offense, will 6 weeks.
Y'all know I'm not a big fan of Jared Goff. But they just seem like, you're watching a team and you're like, hey, this team kind of got it. Everything's just kind of lining up right for them. I think they win the NFC North, if I'm being honest.
From a Vikings fan, that is.
Yeah, you just
respect it.
If they carry what they did the last of the year into this, and then the running back position, they got so much talent, it's scary. I'm going to hate playing defense, watching the Vikings play them, because I think they're going to put up 30 plus a game. You better outscore Detroit, because you're not going to hold that offense under 28.
Yeah, we got a couple more minutes here, so we're just going to talk quickly. You're cheering on teams in your division. Zach, you want to talk about a guy you had ranked number 10, and that's Aaron Rodgers. Quickly here, before we move on to Jeff, we'll let Jeff end the show with his guy. But what do you want to say briefly about Aaron Rodgers here, Zach, cracking into your top 10?
Yeah, I mean, he's Aaron Rodgers, and I think that it's giving, like the kids say these days, it's giving Tom Brady at the Bucks, going to the Bucks kind of situation. I don't think it's a long-term thing. I think it's a 1 to 2 year, and he's going to fall off the cliff faster than an anvil. But you look at everyone's so high on Garrett Wilson. Breece Hall coming back off injury. Let's see how he does. But I mean, Alan Lazard, you brought over the homie from Green Bay. This team is definitely trending in the right direction. I think the offensive line is definitely improving. There's reports that Mekhi Becton is in the best shape of his life. He lost a ton of weight, which is like huge for him. That was like his only issue, was that he couldn't stop putting on weight. And at the end of the day, we talked about it earlier, this division is stacked. You're going to have to score 21 points minimum to stay in these games with Buffalo and Miami. And let's and if New England is your gimme game, that's still not something you really want to walk. You don't want to go to Gillette and be like, this is my easier game in my division. Like it's still Bill Belichick, So I think by default, the schedule, along with having, arguably one of the best young rising wide receiver talents in the NFL and a fresh start and kind of a chip on his shoulder, Aaron Rodgers is certainly a guy that's fueled by an arrogance and a kind of he really wants to prove people wrong and do a ton of psilocybin in his spare time. So, yeah, I think he can easily crack the top 10. I don't think he goes any higher than that. I've seen people put him higher, but yeah, I like the 10 spot for Rodgers.
Yeah, I have him projected out to 11 right now, and I think he can finish in between that 8 to. I think he has a similar range of outcomes to Kirk Cousins, and by way of fantasy points. I think that 9 to 13 range is kind of where we'll see Aaron Rodgers. Neither of them run the ball, so they don't have that upside. But I think they could both have 4,200 yards and 30 plus touchdowns. So I think they're kind of in that same range. All right, Jeff. We got one more guy to talk about here before we end the show. Who somehow cracked your top 10?
The surprise guy that will continue to rise. Because failure wrote him and he didn't write back.
Oh, I love this one.
My man, Geno Smith.
Let's go.
Why? You were talking about wide receiver cores. I'm telling you, Seattle now has one of the top receiver cores. You cannot double DK anymore. That means you are just lobbing it up to a physical freak that is going to get up and snatch it. Other than the Niners, I'm not really afraid of the Rams defense anymore, nor Arizona's. And we're balanced. I can see him dumping it off to both Walker and Charbonnet out of the backfield, man. And they got a secret weapon. I think you guys are going to hear his name. Actually going to be their de facto tight end, kid from UCLA, Jake Bobo. I'm telling you, man, this could be
Bobo.
It's going to be a balanced offense, but it's also going to be somewhat high scoring when they need to score points as well. And, Geno has learned. I don't think last year was a fluke. He's always been a quarterback that had the ball in the right direction. It was just always a little bit higher than it should have been. Now I think he's gotten to the point where he's a lot more accurate and he's a lot more confident. And confidence does certain things to quarterbacks, and I think he's going to show it this year. And an honorable mention as we close. Let's ride. Russ,
I knew it was
Oh
coming.
God.
I knew it was
will be back this year. Russ will be back this year.
Yeah.
I dropped the mic on that.
Back to what?
Geno's a little lower.
You really did drop the mic.
Back for what? Back.
Russ is going to be back in the top 10 this
Of
season.
what?
We wrote him off because of one bad season where he didn't have a head coach. He's going to be back.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we will definitely see. My only worry about Geno is, I project him to take a step back from last year, kind of like I project Jalen Hurts throwing wise, 200 less yards, 2 less passing touchdowns. And that's just really all it comes down to be. I have him just below Matthew Stafford and Bryce Young in my rankings right now at 18.
Oh, the disrespect.
At 18, that's kind of around where I can see Geno Smith coming. We have run a little bit long here, though. We talked about our top 10 quarterbacks next week, or next time we have a show. If we can record next week, we'll be doing top 10 running backs. Then we'll do wide receivers and possibly tight ends to finish it out. I want to thank both Zach, Will, and Jeff. I want to thank you guys for all joining, sending me your lists. I want to thank everyone for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed getting a little bit of different perspectives from everyone, kind of some positives and negatives for everyone, except for maybe, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. No, not too many negatives out there. But, it was definitely a good show. Love the discussion. Hope you guys enjoyed. And like I said, thank you guys for joining. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Zach.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Start throw ups.